Peppa Pig and the dancing light bulb. As evening comes, Peppa and George turn on the light to keep playing. But today, the light bulb seems very lively. The light flickers in a steady rhythm. Their shadows on the wall begin to dance along. After a short performance, the light becomes normal again. Sometimes, even a simple light can bring an unexpected joy. Peppa Pig and the Strange Mirror. One quiet afternoon, Peppa and George discover a strange mirror in the garden. The mirror reflects all of Peppa's movements. But for George, the reflection moves a little slower. Something is definitely not normal. The mirror turns every movement into a funny game. Sometimes seeing things differently can be a lot more fun. Peppa Pig and the strange sounding trumpet. Peppa finds a toy trumpet that looks very ordinary. But when she tries to blow it, the sound is very different. George is startled at first, then becomes curious. Peppa blows more gently, and the trumpet immediately changes its mood. It turns out the trumpet likes to be played in its own way. Peppa and George learn that sometimes listening is just as important as making noise. Peppa Pig and the clock that rang at the wrong time. Everything is calm and peaceful until the clock suddenly rings, even though it's clearly not the right time. Peppa notices the wall clock. The hands aren't moving, but the bell is very busy. George takes a closer look, and as if answering him, the clock rings again. Peppa gently touches the clock, and it immediately proves that it loves attention. Suddenly, the minute hand spins quickly, as if the clock is trying to catch up with time. In the end, the clock goes quiet again. Peppa and George learn that sometimes time just needs a reminder that everyone is having fun. Peppa Pig and the Shooting Star Train. A shooting star streaks across the night sky, surprising Peppa and George. It lands and turns into a glowing train in their yard. The train doors open, inviting them aboard. They travel through starry skies past constellations and planets. The train returns them home, leaving a shining star ticket behind. Peppa Pig and the Shape-Shifting Box. A large cardboard box appears in the middle of the living room. For Peppa, even an ordinary box can be exciting. The box starts to move as if it's going for a walk. In Peppa's imagination, the box turns into a train. Moments later, it becomes a spaceship flying into space. Sometimes the simplest things can bring the biggest joy. Peppa Pig and the Rainbow Door. A beam of sunlight forms a bright rainbow on the wall, catching Peppa and George's attention. The rainbow turns into a glowing door, gently inviting them inside. They step through and discover a colorful valley with low-flowing clouds. They slide down Rainbow Hill surrounded by sparkling light. The door brings them home, leaving a tiny glowing spark as a memory. Peppa Pig and the door that wouldn't open. It's a perfect day, but the door to the garden refuses to cooperate. Peppa pulls, George pushes, the door chooses to stay completely still. Maybe they're standing in the wrong place. They try again, but the door doesn't change its mind. When nothing works, Peppa does the most important thing. Takes a short break. And then, when no one touches it, the door slowly opens on its own. Peppa and George learn that sometimes the hardest things become easy when you stop trying too hard. Peppa Pig and the Lost Balloon. Today, Peppa and George are playing with a very special balloon. A playful breeze lifts the balloon out of Peppa's hand. The balloon slowly floats over familiar places in the garden. It seems to explore the world all by itself. Peppa and George learn that letting things go can be fun too. Even though the balloon is gone, the happiness stays. Peppa Pig and the hat that wouldn't stay still. Peppa loves her new hat. It looks perfect and fits just right. But the hat doesn't seem to agree with its position. Peppa carefully fixes the hat, and it immediately chooses a new spot. George finds this very funny. The hat looks like it's playing a game. Finally, the hat decides to rest for a while on the grass. Peppa learns that sometimes being comfortable is better than wearing a perfect hat. Peppa Pig and the giant car. Peppa and George are surprised to see a giant car blocking their gate. The The wheels of the car are even taller than Peppa. The huge car casts a long shadow over the garden. Inside, the car looks like a moving room. As the car slowly moves, the whole garden seems to shake. Peppa and George realize that sometimes the bigger something is, the more curious it becomes. Peppa Pig and the Noisy Bucket. Peppa notices an ordinary bucket that doesn't seem ordinary today. One gentle tap, and the bucket replies with a fun sound. George taps harder, and the bucket sounds even more excited. Soon the bucket turns into an unexpected musical instrument. After the performance, the bucket needs a little rest. Peppa and George learn that sometimes fun comes from the simplest things. Peppa Pig and the Playful Wind. It looks like a perfectly normal afternoon until the wind arrives. The wind blows through the garden as if it wants to join the fun. Leaves begin to swirl around, flying everywhere. Peppa tries to catch a leaf, but the wind is always one step ahead. After a while, the wind seems to get tired and calms down. Peppa and George learn that sometimes invisible things can bring the biggest fun. Peppa Pig and the Very Low Cloud. One morning, Peppa and George notice a cloud floating lower than usual. The cloud drifts across the yard as if taking a walk. Peppa wonders if she can touch the cloud. The cloud keeps changing shape with the gentle wind. A small cloud is enough to cool the whole garden. Soon, the cloud floats back up, leaving a peaceful morning behind. Peppa Pig and the Backward Clock. One quiet afternoon, Peppa and George notice something strange about the clock in their living room. Instead of moving forward, the clock hands begin to turn backward. As the clock runs backward, everything seems to slow down. Even the smallest movements become gentle and slow. With a light touch, time pauses for a moment. When everything returns to normal, Peppa realizes that sometimes slowing down can be fun too. Peppa Pig and the Shape-Shifting Box. Peppa notices a very big cardboard box. It looks like just a box. But to Peppa, the box feels like a secret place. George gives the box a little push and the adventure begins. The box suddenly turns into a very special vehicle. In their imagination, the box can travel anywhere. Peppa and George learn that sometimes a simple box can hold a whole world of fun. Peppa Pig and the flying umbrella. It looks like it's going to rain today, and Peppa has her umbrella ready. But Peppa soon discovers the wind has other plans. In a flash, the umbrella flies into the air without asking anyone. The umbrella looks very happy, as if it has always dreamed of flying. Whoa! Finally, it lands gently on the grass, satisfied after its short adventure. Peppa learns that sometimes even familiar things want to explore the world. Peppa Pig and the melting cake. Peppa is very excited about the cake, especially on a sunny day like this. But the sun has its own plans for the cake. The cake seems to be changing shape right before their eyes. Peppa tries to save the cake, but the sunshine doesn't cooperate. Even though it's no longer perfect, the cake still looks delicious. Peppa and George learn that sometimes fun doesn't need to be perfect to be sweet. Peppa Pig and the strange noise in the garden. The garden is calm and quiet until a strange rustling sound comes from the bushes. Hey! Hey! The noise isn't loud, but it's curious enough that Peppa and George can't ignore it. Peppa bravely moves closer, while George chooses a safer spot behind her. It turns out the sound was just the wind, but Peppa and George aren't fully convinced yet. And then, the loudest noise in the garden comes from George stepping on a dry leaf. Peppa and George learn that sometimes the scariest things are just in our imagination.